Manager refuses to hire autistic woman, then learns she owns the company. The sleek glass doors of Montgomery Consulting shimmered under the morning sun as Emma Harper adjusted her blazer. She took a deep breath, clutching her neatly prepared resume and portfolio. This wasn't just another job interview, it was her first in a while. Emma had always excelled in her work, but today her nerves were heightened. She knew that being autistic came with its challenges in the workplace, especially when it came to how others perceived her. Inside the towering office building, Andrew Sullivan, the hiring manager, sat behind a polished mahogany desk, scrolling through his phone. His tailored suit was immaculate, and his air of confidence bordered on arrogance. His assistant knocked lightly on the door, peeking in. "Mr. Sullivan, your next interview is here," she said. Andrew sighed, glancing at the clock. "Bring her in." Emma entered the room, her posture straight but her hands fidgeting slightly. She offered a polite smile, her eyes briefly meeting Andrew's before darting away, a habit she couldn't help. Andrew's brow furrowed as he observed her, his practiced smile faltering just slightly. "Emma Harper?" he said, extending a hand. "Yes, that's me." "Thank you for meeting with me," Emma replied, her voice steady but soft. "Have a seat," Andrew said, gesturing to the chair across from him. He glanced down at her resume, scanning it quickly. "So, Emma, tell me about yourself." Emma launched into a well-rehearsed summary of her qualifications, her passion for data analysis, and her track record of solving complex problems in her previous roles. She spoke with precision, her knowledge and expertise shining through. But as she talked, Andrew's focus seemed to waver. He leaned back in his chair, his expression growing increasingly skeptical. "Impressive background," he said after she finished. "But, if I'm being honest, you seem a bit nervous?" Emma hesitated. She had anticipated this question. "I tend to come across that way in new settings," she said, her tone measured. "But once I'm comfortable, I'm highly focused and efficient." Andrew nodded, though his disinterest was clear. "And how do you handle high-pressure situations?" "This role requires someone who can think on their feet, communicate clearly, and adapt quickly." "I thrive under pressure," Emma replied confidently. "In my last role, I led a project that—" Andrew interrupted her, holding up a hand. "Look, Emma, I appreciate your time, but I'm not sure you'd be the right fit for this position. We need someone who can manage a fast-paced environment," and he paused, his eyes briefly scanning her. "I'm not sure this is the place for you." Emma's chest tightened. She had faced subtle discrimination before, but this was blatant. She forced a polite smile. "Thank you for your feedback," she said, rising from her seat. "I'll see myself out." Andrew didn't even bother standing. "Good luck," he said, already turning his attention back to his phone. As Emma walked out of the office, her mind raced. She had been dismissed without any real consideration of her skills or experience. It wasn't the first time someone had underestimated her, but it didn't make it any easier. Andrew, meanwhile, leaned back in his chair, shaking his head. "These HR people need to screen candidates better," he muttered to himself. "What a waste of time." He stood and strolled to the break room, where a few colleagues were gathered. "You won't believe the candidate I just interviewed," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "She couldn't even look me in the eye. How is someone like that supposed to lead a team?" The others chuckled, their laughter echoing down the hall. As Emma stepped out into the cool afternoon air, she took a deep breath, letting the sting of rejection settle. This wasn't new to her. Being underestimated had been a recurring theme throughout her life. But today, it hurt more than usual. Maybe it was the way Andrew Sullivan had dismissed her so easily, or maybe it was the fact that she had worked tirelessly to be more than just a label. Emma found a bench nearby and sat down, her portfolio resting on her lap. As she stared at the bustling streets, her thoughts drifted to her childhood, a time when being different wasn't just a challenge but a constant reminder that she didn't quite fit. Emma's parents had always known she was unique. While other children spent recess playing tag or chatting in groups, Emma would sit quietly under the shade of a tree, lost in the intricate patterns of the leaves or meticulously organizing her collection of colored pencils. Her teachers often described her as bright but withdrawn, a phrase her parents came to loathe. When she was diagnosed with autism at the age of 9, it came as both a relief and a challenge. The label helped explain her struggles with social cues and sensory sensitivities, but it also brought with it a world of misunderstandings. Teachers expected less of her, classmates avoided her, and even some family members treated her differently, as if she were fragile or incapable. But Emma was anything but incapable. By the time she was 12, she was solving complex math problems that baffled her peers. Her room was filled with notebooks detailing algorithms she had created for fun, and her parents often joked that she would one day run a tech empire. Still, the road was far from smooth. High school was a battlefield of awkward interactions and unspoken judgments. Emma's peers didn't understand her, and she didn't know how to bridge the gap. She often ate lunch alone, her nose buried in a book about data science or machine learning, while the other students laughed and chatted at their tables. But Emma refused to let the opinions of others define her. She poured herself into her studies, earning scholarships and accolades that paved her way to a top university. There, she thrived academically, though the social challenges persisted. Professors praised her innovative approach to problem solving, and her classmates reluctantly acknowledged her brilliance when group projects came together seamlessly under her guidance. After graduation, Emma entered the workforce with a mix of hope and trepidation. She knew she had the skills to succeed, but she also knew the world wasn't always kind to people who didn't fit the mold. Her first job as a data analyst had been a stepping stone, but it wasn't long before she hit a wall. Despite her exceptional performance, her ideas were often dismissed in meetings, and her colleagues rarely included her in conversations outside of work. One particularly painful moment stood out in her memory. A manager had once told her, "You're great with numbers, but maybe let someone else handle the client-facing stuff." You're not exactly a people person. Emma had smiled politely and nodded, but inside, she had felt the familiar sting of being reduced to a stereotype. She left that job shortly after, determined to find a place where she could be valued for her abilities rather than judged for her differences. Now, sitting on the bench with her portfolio in hand, Emma felt the weight of those experiences pressing down on her. But she also felt something else, a spark of defiance. She had faced worse than Andrew Sullivan, and she had come out stronger every time. This rejection wasn't the end of her story, it was just another chapter. She glanced at her watch. It was almost time for her next meeting, one she had scheduled weeks ago with the board of Montgomery Consulting. Emma stood, smoothing her blazer, and made her way to the company's headquarters. This meeting wasn't about a job, it was about the future of the company she had recently acquired. Meanwhile, back at Montgomery Consulting, Andrew Sullivan was basking in his usual sense of self-importance. He was leaning against the break room counter, regaling his colleagues with exaggerated tales of his disastrous interview with Emma. "She couldn't even look me in the eye," he said with a laugh, sipping his coffee. "I mean, how is someone like that supposed to handle clients or lead a team? It's common sense." One of his colleagues, a younger recruiter named Jessica, shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe she was just nervous," she offered tentatively. "People don't always show their best selves in interviews." Andrew waved her comment away dismissively. "Nervous or not, it's my job to find the best. We don't have time to babysit." Jessica frowned but said nothing. She had only been at the company for a few months and didn't feel confident challenging someone like Andrew, who had been there for years and had a reputation for being both arrogant and well-connected. As Andrew continued to pat himself on the back, the office buzzed with news of an impending visit from the company's new owner. No one knew much about the mysterious figure who had recently acquired a controlling interest in Montgomery Consulting, but rumors were flying. Some speculated it was a venture capitalist looking to streamline operations, while others believed it was a former executive returning to shake things up. Andrew paid little attention to the gossip. He assumed the new owner would be like every other corporate leader he had encountered, distant, out of touch, and unlikely to interfere with his day-to-day operations. Emma arrived at the headquarters with a renewed sense of purpose. She had spent years proving herself, not just to others but to herself, and today was no different. As she entered the sleek lobby, her heels clicking against the polished floor, she felt a mix of nerves and determination. The receptionist greeted her with a warm smile. Ms. Harper, the boardroom is ready for you. The leadership team is already assembled. Thank you, Emma said, her voice steady. She straightened her posture, clutching her portfolio tightly as she made her way to the elevator. The ride to the top floor was brief but felt like an eternity. Emma's reflection in the mirrored walls stared back at her, a reminder of how far she had come. This wasn't just about her. It was about proving that competence and potential couldn't be measured by societal expectations. When the elevator doors opened, Emma stepped into the boardroom, where a group of executives sat waiting. The air was thick with anticipation, and the chatter ceased the moment she entered. All eyes turned to her, and for a brief moment, she felt the familiar weight of judgment. But then she saw the looks of respect in their eyes, and her confidence surged. These weren't people like Andrew Sullivan. They were here because they knew her worth, because they had seen the results of her work and believed in her vision. Good afternoon, Emma said, her voice firm and clear. Thank you all for being here. Let's get started. The boardroom was silent as Emma took her seat at the head of the long, polished table. Her composed demeanor left no doubt that she belonged there. As she organized her papers and opened her portfolio, the executives around the table exchanged curious glances. Ms. Harper, one of the board members, a middle-aged man named Richard, began, "Thank you for taking the time to meet with us. We're eager to hear your plans for the future of Montgomery Consulting." Emma nodded politely. "Thank you, Richard. I'm looking forward to working with all of you to take this company to the next level." She launched into a presentation detailing her vision for the company. Her ideas were innovative and forward-thinking, focusing on streamlining operations, investing in employee development, and fostering a culture of inclusivity and innovation. As she spoke, the room grew increasingly engaged. The executives leaned in, taking notes and nodding in agreement. Emma's passion and expertise shone through, and by the time she finished, the room broke into enthusiastic applause. "That was impressive," another board member said, his voice filled with admiration. "It's clear you've done your research, and your vision is exactly what this company needs." Emma smiled, a sense of pride swelling in her chest. She had worked tirelessly for this moment, and it felt good to be recognized for her abilities rather than judged for her differences. As the meeting wrapped up, Richard addressed her again. "Ms. Harper, there's one more thing. Would you like us to introduce you to the rest of the staff today, or would you prefer to keep things under wraps for now?" Emma considered this for a moment. Part of her wanted to ease into her new role, but another part of her, the part that had spent years being underestimated, wanted to face the staff head-on. "I'd like to meet them today," she said firmly. "It's important to establish a connection with the team right from the start." Richard nodded. "Very well. I'll arrange for an all-hands meeting this afternoon." Meanwhile, on the lower floors of the building, Andrew Sullivan was oblivious to the seismic shift taking place above him. He strolled back to his office after another coffee break, feeling quite pleased with himself. His latest round of interviews had yielded a few promising candidates, at least in his eyes, and he was confident that his decisions would once again earn him praise from the leadership team. As he settled into his chair, Jessica, the young recruiter, knocked on his door. "Andrew, have you heard? The new owner is here today." Andrew glanced up, mildly annoyed at the interruption. "Yeah, I heard. Big deal. It's probably some out-of-touch suit who'll make a few speeches and disappear." Jessica hesitated, her expression uneasy. "I don't think so. I overheard Richard saying that the new owner is planning some big changes." Andrew snorted. "Let me guess, more diversity initiatives and team-building nonsense. Whatever. As long as they don't mess with my department, I couldn't care less." Jessica bit her lip, unsure how to respond. She decided not to push the issue and left Andrew to his arrogance. Later that afternoon, the staff gathered in the main conference room for the all-hands meeting. The atmosphere was charged with curiosity and anticipation. Everyone wanted to catch a glimpse of the new owner and hear what they had to say. Andrew leaned against the back wall, arms crossed, his expression one of bored indifference. He had better things to do than sit through another corporate pep talk, but attendance was mandatory. The chatter in the room quieted as Richard stepped up to the podium. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "As you know, Montgomery Consulting has recently undergone a change in ownership. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our new owner and CEO, Ms. Emma Harper. Andrew's smirk vanished. He straightened, his eyes narrowing as Emma stepped onto the stage. For a moment, he thought he was seeing things. But no, there she was, the same woman he had dismissed earlier that day, now standing in front of the entire company as their leader. The room erupted in applause, though Andrew barely registered it. His mind raced as he replayed their earlier interaction, his condescending remarks, and his outright dismissal of her. A sinking feeling settled in his stomach. Emma approached the podium, her expression calm but confident. She scanned the crowd, her gaze briefly landing on Andrew, though she gave no indication that she recognized him. Taking a deep breath, she began to speak. "Thank you, Richard, and thank you all for being here," she said, her voice steady. "As some of you may know, I recently acquired a controlling interest in Montgomery Consulting. This company has a strong foundation, and I'm excited to build on that foundation to create something even greater." Her words were met with nods and murmurs of approval from the crowd. Emma continued, her tone passionate yet composed. "My vision for this company is simple: to create an environment where innovation thrives, where every employee feels valued, and where we lead not just in profits but in principles. I believe that a company's greatest asset is its people, and I'm committed to investing in our team to ensure that we all succeed together." As she spoke, Andrew's discomfort grew. Her words were a stark contrast to the dismissive attitude he had shown her earlier, and he couldn't help but feel the weight of his arrogance bearing down on him. Emma's speech concluded with a standing ovation. She stepped down from the podium, and Richard took the microphone again to wrap up the meeting. As the crowd began to disperse, Andrew lingered at the back of the room, unsure of what to do. Emma, meanwhile, was approached by several employees eager to introduce themselves and express their enthusiasm for her leadership. She greeted each one warmly, her genuine interest in their roles evident. Eventually, Andrew mustered the courage to approach her. He felt a mix of dread and desperation as he walked up to her, his usual confidence nowhere to be found. "Miss Harper," he began, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. Emma turned to face him, her expression polite but unreadable. "Mr. Sullivan, isn't it?" He nodded, his face flushing. "But I just wanted to apologize for earlier. I had no idea who you were, and Emma held up a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. "You didn't know who I was," she said evenly, "but you did know that I was a candidate for a position in this company. And you dismissed me without giving me a fair chance?" Andrew's mouth opened, but no words came out. Emma's calm yet firm tone left him feeling smaller than he ever had before. "I believe in second chances," Emma continued, her gaze steady. "But I also believe in accountability. If we're going to create the kind of company I just described, it starts with how we treat people, every person, regardless of their background or how they present themselves." Andrew nodded quickly, his head bowed. "Of course, Ms. Harper. I understand." Emma studied him for a moment, then said, "We'll see if your actions align with your words. For now, I suggest you reflect on how you approach your role here." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Andrew to grapple with the consequences of his actions. The conference room emptied, but Andrew Sullivan remained rooted in place. His heart pounded as he replayed Emma's words in his head. Accountability. The word rang in his ears like a gong. For someone so used to wielding authority without question, the idea of being held accountable was deeply unsettling. As Emma walked back to her temporary office, she allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Facing Andrew had been difficult, but it was necessary. His behavior was emblematic of a culture she was determined to change. But the work was just beginning. Over the next few weeks, Emma threw herself into transforming Montgomery Consulting. She implemented new policies designed to foster inclusivity and respect across all levels of the organization. Training programs focused on unconscious bias and effective communication were rolled out company-wide. Emma also made a point to meet with employees individually, learning about their roles, challenges, and aspirations. The changes weren't easy. Some employees embraced the new direction, eager to see the company grow into something better. Others resisted, grumbling about corporate overreach and wasting time on soft skills. Emma anticipated this pushback and handled it with the same calm, steady resolve that had carried her through life's challenges. Andrew, however, was a different story. For the first time in his career, he felt the ground shifting beneath him. His colleagues, once quick to laugh at his jokes or seek his approval, now kept their distance. Jessica, the young recruiter, no longer hesitated to challenge him during team discussions, and Emma's influence was evident in her growing confidence. One afternoon, Andrew received an email from Emma's office, requesting a one-on-one meeting. He stared at the screen, a knot forming in his stomach. He knew this meeting could determine his future at the company. When the time came, Andrew entered Emma's office with a mixture of trepidation and false bravado. Emma sat behind her desk, her demeanor calm and professional. The small oak leaf necklace she wore, a subtle but constant reminder of her journey, glinted in the soft light. "Mr. Sullivan, thank you for coming," she said, gesturing for him to sit. Andrew obeyed, his usual confidence nowhere to be found. "Thank you for meeting with me, Ms. Harper," he said, his voice carefully neutral. Emma studied him for a moment before speaking. "Andrew, I've been observing your work over the past few weeks. You're clearly experienced and capable, but there are aspects of your leadership style that need to change." Andrew swallowed hard. "I understand," he said quickly. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Emma raised an eyebrow. "Are you? Because creating a culture of respect and inclusivity isn't just about compliance. It's about genuine change, about recognizing your biases and making a conscious effort to overcome them." Andrew nodded, though his discomfort was evident. "I realize I made a mistake with you," he said. "I judged you unfairly, and I deeply regret that." Emma leaned forward slightly, her gaze steady. "It wasn't just me, Andrew. That kind of behavior affects everyone. When leaders dismiss people based on superficial impressions, they send a message that talent and potential don't matter. Is that the kind of leader you want to be?" Andrew shook his head, his face flushed with shame. "No, it's not. I want to do better." Emma regarded him for a moment, considering his words. "I'm giving you an opportunity to prove that," she said finally. "You'll be participating in our new leadership development program, and I expect you to fully engage with it. If I don't see genuine progress, we'll have to reevaluate your role here." Andrew exhaled, a mix of relief and resolve washing over him. "Thank you," he said. "I won't let you down." Emma nodded. "I hope not. For your sake and for the company's." In the months that followed, the changes Emma implemented began to take root. The company's culture shifted as employees embraced the new values of collaboration and respect. Teams became more cohesive and productivity soared. Even Andrew, to his credit, made an effort to change. He attended every session of the leadership development program, often staying afterward to ask questions or seek feedback. His transformation wasn't instantaneous, but it was sincere. Jessica, the young recruiter, noticed the difference during a meeting one afternoon. When she presented a new hiring initiative, Andrew didn't interrupt or dismiss her ideas as he once might have. Instead, he listened carefully and offered constructive suggestions. After the meeting, Jessica approached him. "I just wanted to say, I've noticed a change in you," she said, her tone cautious but genuine. "It's refreshing." Andrew smiled faintly, his expression tinged with humility. "Thanks, Jessica. I still have a lot to learn, but I'm trying." Jessica nodded, a flicker of respect in her eyes. "Well, it shows." Meanwhile, Emma's leadership continued to inspire the company. Her decision to be transparent about her own experiences as an autistic woman resonated with employees at all levels. She hosted open forums where team members could share their own stories and challenges, creating a sense of connection and understanding that had been missing before. One afternoon, during a company-wide town hall, Emma addressed the staff directly. "When I first walked into this building, I wasn't seen for who I am," she said. "I was judged based on assumptions rather than my abilities. That's something many people experience every day, not just here, but everywhere. And it's something we can change, starting now." She paused, letting her words sink in. Inclusivity isn't just a buzzword. It's a commitment to recognizing the value in every individual, regardless of how they present themselves or what challenges they face. It's about creating an environment where everyone has the opportunity to succeed. The room erupted in applause, and Emma felt a surge of pride. This was why she had fought so hard, for herself and for others like her. The road had been long and often lonely, but moments like this made it all worthwhile. Months later, as Emma walked through the office, she couldn't help but marvel at how far the company had come. The atmosphere was different now, more open, more collaborative. Employees greeted her warmly, their smiles genuine. She paused outside Andrew's office and saw him deep in conversation with Jessica. They were brainstorming ideas for a new recruitment campaign, their energy and enthusiasm evident. Emma smiled to herself, pleased to see the progress they had made. As she turned to leave, Andrew glanced up and caught her eye. He hesitated for a moment before offering her a small nod of acknowledgement. Emma nodded back, a silent understanding passing between them. That evening, as Emma sat in her apartment, she reflected on her journey. The path hadn't been easy, but every obstacle had shaped her into the leader she was today. She thought of the young girl who had sat under a tree, lost in her own world, and wished she could tell her how far she would go. Emma reached for the necklace around her neck, her fingers brushing against the small oak leaf charm. It was a symbol of growth, resilience, and the strength to keep moving forward. She smiled, a sense of peace settling over her. This was just the beginning. The weeks following her meeting with Andrew were transformative, not just for the company but for Emma personally. She sat in her office late one evening, the city lights twinkling through the floor-to-ceiling windows. A small stack of notes lay on her desk, letters and emails from employees thanking her for the changes she had initiated. One letter in particular caught her attention. "Ms. Harper, I wanted to thank you for giving me a voice. As someone who's always felt invisible in the workplace, I never imagined that a CEO would care about someone like me. Your openness about your journey has inspired me to believe in my own potential. Thank you for making this company a place where people like me can thrive." Emma set the letter down, her chest tight with emotion. She had spent so much of her life fighting to be seen, to be valued. To know that her efforts were making a difference for others was a reward beyond anything she had imagined. But there was still work to be done. Andrew Sullivan's transformation wasn't smooth or immediate. He struggled with the leadership development program, bristling at the feedback he received during training sessions. Old habits were hard to break, and Andrew often found himself slipping into defensive behavior when confronted about his biases. One afternoon, during a particularly intense session, the facilitator, a soft-spoken yet firm woman named Diane, addressed Andrew directly. "Mr. Sullivan," she said, "why do you think you've struggled to connect with your team?" Andrew hesitated, his jaw tightening. "I don't know," he admitted. "I've always thought results were what mattered most. I never really considered the personal side of things." Diane nodded. "And do you think your approach has been effective?" Andrew shifted uncomfortably. "It's gotten results," he said. "But I guess, maybe not the kind of results that last." Diane smiled gently. "That's a good realization. Leadership isn't just about outcomes. It's about people. If your team doesn't trust you, doesn't feel valued, those results won't be sustainable." Andrew left the session feeling unsettled but reflective. For the first time, he began to question not just his actions but the mindset that had driven them. He thought about Emma's words during their meeting, about accountability and genuine change, and wondered if he was capable of becoming the leader she envisioned. As Emma continued her efforts to reshape Montgomery Consulting, she decided to launch a new initiative, an internal mentorship program. The goal was to foster collaboration and support among employees, breaking down the silos that had formed over the years. At the program's kickoff event, Emma addressed the gathered staff. "This mentorship program is about more than just career development," she said. "It's about building connections, sharing knowledge, and supporting each other as we grow. We all have something to learn and something to teach. Together, we can create a culture where everyone feels empowered to succeed." The program paired employees from different departments, encouraging them to share their perspectives and experiences. Andrew was paired with Jessica, the young recruiter who had once been intimidated by him. At first, their interactions were awkward, with Andrew struggling to open up and Jessica hesitant to trust his sincerity. But as they spent more time together, they began to find common ground. Emma regarded him for a moment, considering his words. "I'm giving you an opportunity to prove that," she said finally. "You'll be participating in our new leadership development program, and I expect you to fully engage with it. If I don't see genuine progress, we'll have to reevaluate your role here." Andrew exhaled, a mix of relief and resolve washing over him. "Thank you," he said. "I won't let you down." Emma nodded. "I hope not. For your sake and for the company's." In the months that followed, the changes Emma implemented began to take root. The company's culture shifted as employees embraced the new values of collaboration and respect. Teams became more cohesive and productivity soared. Even Andrew, to his credit, made an effort to change. He attended every session of the leadership development program, often staying afterward to ask questions or seek feedback. His transformation wasn't instantaneous, but it was sincere. Jessica, the young recruiter, noticed the difference during a meeting one afternoon. When she presented a new hiring initiative, Andrew didn't interrupt or dismiss her ideas as he once might have. Instead, he listened carefully and offered constructive suggestions. After the meeting, Jessica approached him. "I just wanted to say, I've noticed a change in you," she said, her tone cautious but genuine. "It's refreshing." Andrew smiled faintly, his expression tinged with humility. "Thanks, Jessica. I still have a lot to learn, but I'm trying." Jessica nodded, a flicker of respect in her eyes. "Well, it shows." Meanwhile, Emma's leadership continued to inspire the company. Her decision to be transparent about her own experiences as an autistic woman resonated with employees at all levels. She hosted open forums where team members could share their own stories and challenges, creating a sense of connection and understanding that had been missing before. One afternoon, during a company-wide town hall, Emma addressed the staff directly. "When I first walked into this building, I wasn't seen for who I am," she said. "I was judged based on assumptions rather than my abilities. That's something many people experience every day, not just here, but everywhere. And it's something we can change, starting now." She paused, letting her words sink in. Inclusivity isn't just a buzzword. It's a commitment to recognizing the value in every individual, regardless of how they present themselves or what challenges they face. It's about creating an environment where everyone has the opportunity to succeed. The room erupted in applause, and Emma felt a surge of pride. This was why she had fought so hard, for herself and for others like her. The road had been long and often lonely, but moments like this made it all worthwhile. Months later, as Emma walked through the office, she couldn't help but marvel at how far the company had come. The atmosphere was different now, more open, more collaborative. Employees greeted her warmly, their smiles genuine. She paused outside Andrew's office and saw him deep in conversation with Jessica. They were brainstorming ideas for a new recruitment campaign, their energy and enthusiasm evident. Emma smiled to herself, pleased to see the progress they had made. As she turned to leave, Andrew glanced up and caught her eye. He hesitated for a moment before offering her a small nod of acknowledgement. Emma nodded back, a silent understanding passing between them. That evening, as Emma sat in her apartment, she reflected on her journey. The path hadn't been easy, but every obstacle had shaped her into the leader she was today. She thought of the young girl who had sat under a tree, lost in her own world, and wished she could tell her how far she would go. Emma reached for the necklace around her neck, her fingers brushing against the small oak leaf charm. It was a symbol of growth, resilience, and the strength to keep moving forward. She smiled, a sense of peace settling over her. This was just the beginning. The weeks following her meeting with Andrew were transformative, not just for the company but for Emma personally. She sat in her office late one evening, the city lights twinkling through the floor-to-ceiling windows. A small stack of notes lay on her desk, letters and emails from employees thanking her for the changes she had initiated. One letter in particular caught her attention. "Ms. Harper, I wanted to thank you for giving me a voice. As someone who's always felt invisible in the workplace, I never imagined that a CEO would care about someone like me. Your openness about your journey has inspired me to believe in my own potential. Thank you for making this company a place where people like me can thrive. Emma set the letter down, her chest tight with emotion. She had spent so much of her life fighting to be seen, to be valued. To know that her efforts were making a difference for others was a reward beyond anything she had imagined. But there was still work to be done. Andrew Sullivan's transformation wasn't smooth or immediate. He struggled with the leadership development program, bristling at the feedback he received during training sessions. Old habits were hard to break, and Andrew often found himself slipping into defensive behavior when confronted about his biases. One afternoon, during a particularly intense session, the facilitator, a soft-spoken yet firm woman named Diane, addressed Andrew directly. "Mr. Sullivan," she said, "why do you think you've struggled to connect with your team?" Andrew hesitated, his jaw tightening. "I don't know," he admitted. "I've always thought results were what mattered most. I never really considered the personal side of things." Diane nodded. "And do you think your approach has been effective?" Andrew shifted uncomfortably. "It's gotten results," he said. "But I guess, maybe not the kind of results that last." Diane smiled gently. "That's a good realization. Leadership isn't just about outcomes. It's about people. If your team doesn't trust you, doesn't feel valued, those results won't be sustainable." Andrew left the session feeling unsettled but reflective. For the first time, he began to question not just his actions but the mindset that had driven them. He thought about Emma's words during their meeting, about accountability and genuine change, and wondered if he was capable of becoming the leader she envisioned. As Emma continued her efforts to reshape Montgomery Consulting, she decided to launch a new initiative, an internal mentorship program. The goal was to foster collaboration and support among employees, breaking down the silos that had formed over the years. At the program's kickoff event, Emma addressed the gathered staff. "This mentorship program is about more than just career development," she said. "It's about building connections, sharing knowledge, and supporting each other as we grow. We all have something to learn and something to teach. Together, we can create a culture where everyone feels empowered to succeed." The program paired employees from different departments, encouraging them to share their perspectives and experiences. Andrew was paired with Jessica, the young recruiter who had once been intimidated by him. At first, their interactions were awkward, with Andrew struggling to open up and Jessica hesitant to trust his sincerity. But as they spent more time together, they began to find common ground. One afternoon, during a mentorship meeting, Jessica decided to confront Andrew about his past behavior. "Can I ask you something?" she said, her tone cautious but firm. Andrew looked up from his notes, surprised. "Of course. Why were you so dismissive of me when I first joined the company?" Jessica asked. "Was it because I was new? Or because I'm young? Or was it something else?" Andrew felt a pang of guilt. He took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "I think it was all of those things," he admitted. "I saw you as inexperienced, and I let my assumptions cloud my judgment. It wasn't fair to you and I'm sorry." Jessica nodded, appreciating his honesty. "I'm glad you're trying to change," she said. "But it's going to take time for people to trust you again." "I know," Andrew said. "I just hope I can earn that trust back." As their mentorship continued, Jessica began to see a different side of Andrew, one that was vulnerable and genuinely committed to growth. She shared her own challenges as a young woman in the workforce, and Andrew listened with an openness that surprised her. By the end of the program, their relationship had transformed. They weren't just mentor and mentee, they were colleagues who respected and supported each other. One day, Andrew found himself in the break room, overhearing a conversation between two employees. They were discussing a new hire, a shy, quiet woman who had joined the IT department. One of the employees made a snide remark about her lack of social skills, and the other laughed. Normally, Andrew might have ignored the exchange. But this time, he felt compelled to intervene. "Hey," he said, his tone firm but not confrontational. "That's not how we talk about our colleagues here. If you have concerns about her work, address them professionally. But judging someone based on their personality isn't acceptable." The two employees looked at him, surprised. One muttered an apology, and the other quickly changed the subject. Andrew walked away, feeling a sense of pride. It was a small moment, but it marked a significant shift in his approach to leadership. As Montgomery Consulting flourished under Emma's leadership, she received an invitation to speak at a prestigious business conference. The theme of the conference was redefining leadership in the modern workplace, and Emma's story was the perfect fit. On the day of the conference, Emma stood on stage before a packed audience. She took a deep breath, her nerves tempered by the knowledge that her voice mattered. "My journey to this stage has been anything but conventional," she began. "As a woman on the autism spectrum, I've faced my share of challenges. But those challenges have shaped me into the leader I am today." She spoke about the importance of inclusivity, the power of perseverance, and the need to challenge societal norms. Her words resonated deeply with the audience, many of whom gave her a standing ovation at the end of her speech. Back at the office, the staff gathered to watch a recording of her talk. Even Andrew found himself moved by her story, his respect for her growing with each passing day. Despite the progress Andrew had made, there was still one unresolved issue between him and Emma, their initial interview. One day, Andrew requested a private meeting with her. "Ms. Harper," he began, his tone serious, "I know I've apologized before, but I feel like I need to address that interview directly." Emma regarded him with a calm but curious expression. "Go on," she said. "When you came into my office that day," Andrew said, "I didn't see you. I saw my assumptions. I judged you unfairly, and I dismissed you without giving you the chance you deserved. That wasn't just unprofessional, it was wrong." Emma nodded, appreciating his candor. "And what have you learned from that experience?" she asked. "I've learned that leadership is about more than just making decisions," Andrew said. "It's about seeing people for who they are, not who you expect them to be. I can't change what I did, but I can do better moving forward." Emma studied him for a moment before speaking. "Andrew, growth isn't about being perfect. It's about recognizing your flaws and committing to change. I believe you're on the right path, but it's up to you to stay on it." Andrew nodded, gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you, Ms. Harper, for giving me the chance to learn from my mistakes." Years later, Montgomery Consulting was celebrated as a model of inclusivity and innovation. Under Emma's leadership, the company had not only achieved record-breaking success but had also transformed into a place where employees felt valued and empowered. Andrew, now a senior leader in the company, often reflected on his journey. He knew he had Emma to thank for helping him become the leader he was today. As for Emma, she continued to break barriers and inspire others. Her story became a beacon of hope for anyone who had ever been underestimated, proving that true leadership wasn't about fitting into a mold, it was about breaking it. As Montgomery Consulting evolved under Emma's leadership, she began dedicating more of her time to mentoring employees who, like her, had been underestimated or overlooked. She launched an initiative called Voices of Potential, a program designed to identify and nurture talent from underrepresented groups. Emma personally selected participants for the program, often choosing individuals who reminded her of her younger self. One such individual was Sarah Patel, a quiet but brilliant analyst in the finance department. Sarah had a reputation for being detail-oriented and thorough, but she struggled to communicate her ideas during meetings. Her colleagues often dismissed her, focusing instead on the more outspoken team members. Emma met with Sarah one-on-one after hearing about her struggles. The two sat in Emma's office, the atmosphere warm and inviting. "Sarah," Emma began, "I've seen your work, and it's exceptional. But I understand you've been having trouble making your voice heard in team discussions. Can you tell me more about that?" Sarah hesitated, her hands fidgeting in her lap. I get nervous," she admitted. "I feel like everyone else is so confident, and I'm afraid of saying the wrong thing." Emma nodded, her expression empathetic. "I know exactly how that feels," she said. "When I was starting out, I often felt like I had to fight to be heard. But I learned that confidence doesn't come from trying to be like everyone else. It comes from knowing your value." Over the next few weeks, Emma worked closely with Sarah, coaching her on presentation skills and helping her build confidence. Sarah's transformation was slow but steady. During a quarterly review meeting, she presented a financial strategy that left the leadership team thoroughly impressed. For the first time, Sarah felt truly seen and appreciated. Afterward, she sent Emma a heartfelt email. "Ms. Harper, thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. Your guidance has changed the way I see my potential, and I'll always be grateful for that." Emma smiled as she read the email, her heart full. Moments like these reminded her why she had taken on the challenge of leading Montgomery Consulting. As Andrew continued his journey of self-improvement, he found himself increasingly drawn to the mentorship program. He volunteered to lead a workshop on leadership accountability, sharing his own mistakes and lessons learned. At first, he was nervous about being vulnerable in front of his colleagues, but he quickly realized the power of honesty. During one session, Andrew told the story of his initial interaction with Emma, sparing no detail about his biases and poor judgment. The room fell silent as he spoke, the weight of his words sinking in. "When I dismissed her," Andrew said, his voice steady but filled with regret, "I wasn't just undermining her, I was undermining myself. I let my assumptions blind me to her brilliance, and I almost missed out on one of the greatest leaders this company has ever had. That's a mistake I'll never make again." After the workshop, several employees approached Andrew to thank him for his honesty. One junior manager, Marcus, said, "Hearing your story made me realize I've been doing the same thing, judging people before giving them a fair chance. I want to do better." Andrew felt a sense of pride and purpose he hadn't experienced in years. For the first time, he felt like he was truly making a positive impact. Emma's success at Montgomery Consulting didn't go unnoticed. Industry leaders began reaching out to her for advice on fostering inclusivity and driving innovation. She was invited to join panels, write articles, and even consult for other companies looking to follow her lead. But Emma's vision extended beyond corporate boardrooms. She partnered with nonprofit organizations to create programs that supported neurodiverse individuals entering the workforce. One of her proudest achievements was the establishment of the Harper Fellowship, a scholarship program for autistic students pursuing careers in business and technology. At the launch event for the fellowship, Emma stood before a crowd of students, educators, and industry leaders. She spoke with the same passion that had carried her through every challenge. "This fellowship isn't just about providing financial support," she said. "It's about breaking down barriers and creating opportunities for those who've been told they don't belong. Because everyone has something valuable to contribute, and it's time we start recognizing that." 1 year after Emma took over as CEO, Andrew received an unexpected email from her office. He was being considered for a promotion to Vice President of Talent Development, a role that would put him in charge of mentorship programs, leadership training, and employee engagement initiatives. When Andrew met with Emma to discuss the opportunity, he was both humbled and honored. "Ms. Harper," he said, "I don't know if I deserve this. After everything." "You've earned it," Emma replied, her tone firm but kind. "You've shown growth, humility, and a genuine commitment to making this company better. That's what leadership is about." Andrew accepted the role, vowing to honor the trust Emma had placed in him. He threw himself into his new responsibilities, using his own experiences as a guide to help others grow. Under Emma's leadership, Montgomery Consulting became a beacon of innovation and inclusivity. The company's success was measured not just in profits but in the impact it had on its employees and the broader community. Emma's story continued to inspire others, proving that determination and authenticity could overcome even the most entrenched biases. Years later, Emma reflected on her journey during an interview with a prominent business magazine. "When I walked into that interview with Andrew Sullivan, I didn't know what the future held," she said. "But I knew my worth, and I refused to let anyone take that from me. That moment wasn't the end of my story, it was the beginning." The interviewer smiled. "And what would you say to others who are facing similar challenges?" Emma's expression softened. "I tell them this: don't let anyone define your potential. Your value isn't determined by other people's opinions. It's determined by the impact you make and the legacy you leave behind." Several months after Andrew's promotion to Vice President of Talent Development, Emma called a leadership retreat for the company's top executives. The retreat, held in a tranquil countryside location, was designed to reflect on the company's progress and set new goals for the future. For Emma, it was also an opportunity to push her leadership team to think beyond traditional business metrics and focus on their broader impact. On the second day of the retreat, Emma led a session titled Leadership Beyond Results. She began with a story about her own journey, recounting not just the challenges she faced but the moments of clarity that had shaped her approach to leadership. When I was younger, Emma said, standing before the group, I used to think success was about proving people wrong, about showing the world that I was capable despite their doubts. But as I've grown, I've realized it's not about proving others wrong. It's about proving myself right. It's about staying true to who I am and using my voice to create opportunities for others. The room was silent, the executives hanging on her every word. Leadership isn't about perfection, Emma continued. It's about progress. It's about recognizing our flaws, learning from our mistakes, and striving to be better every day. And it's about lifting others as we climb, because real success is never achieved alone. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. Even Andrew, who had once dismissed Emma so thoughtlessly, felt a surge of admiration and gratitude. He knew that without her leadership and her willingness to challenge him, he wouldn't be the person he was today. Back at Montgomery Consulting, Andrew took his new role to heart. He became a champion for the mentorship program, often personally mentoring employees who struggled with confidence or felt overlooked. One of those employees was Kyle, a young IT specialist with a talent for cybersecurity but a fear of public speaking. During a one-on-one session, Kyle confided in Andrew, I'm great behind a computer screen, but the moment I have to present my ideas, I freeze up. I feel like no one takes me seriously. Andrew saw echoes of his own past mistakes in Kyle's situation. He remembered how quick he had been to dismiss people like Emma and realized the importance of nurturing talent, even when it didn't fit the mold. You're not alone in feeling that way, Andrew said, his tone encouraging. But the fact that you're here, sharing your ideas, means you've already taken the first step. Confidence isn't about never being nervous, it's about pushing through despite the nerves. With Andrew's guidance, Kyle slowly began to find his voice. A few months later, he presented a groundbreaking cybersecurity proposal to the executive team, proposal that not only impressed the leadership but also led to significant improvements in the company's data protection measures. After the meeting, Kyle approached Andrew, his face beaming. I couldn't have done this without you, he said. Andrew shook his head, a small smile on his lips. You did this, Kyle. I just gave you a nudge. Emma's leadership style began to attract attention beyond Montgomery Consulting. She was invited to participate in a global leadership summit, where she shared her insights on fostering inclusivity and driving innovation. Her keynote speech, titled The Power of Authentic Leadership, drew standing ovations and sparked conversations across industries. During a panel discussion, a fellow CEO asked Emma, what's the one piece of advice you'd give to leaders who want to create a more inclusive workplace? Emma thought for a moment before replying. Start by listening, she said. Too often, leaders think they have all the answers. But the truth is, the best ideas often come from the people you least expect. When you create an environment where everyone feels heard and valued, you unlock potential you didn't even know existed. The panel moderator chimed in. And what about the skeptics? Those who think inclusivity is just a buzzword? Emma smiled. I'd say inclusivity isn't just the right thing to do, it's also smart business. Diverse teams are more innovative, more resilient, and better equipped to solve complex problems. The data backs it up, but more importantly, the results speak for themselves. Under Emma's leadership, Montgomery Consulting became a case study in corporate transformation. Employee satisfaction scores soared, and the company's reputation as an industry leader grew stronger. Clients appreciated the company's innovative approach, and job seekers flocked to join a workplace known for its supportive and forward-thinking culture. One of the most significant changes came during the annual performance review process. Emma implemented a new system that prioritized not just results but also collaboration, mentorship, and personal growth. Employees were encouraged to set goals that aligned with both their professional aspirations and the company's values. Andrew played a key role in rolling out the new system. He worked closely with department heads to ensure the evaluations were fair, constructive, and focused on growth. For Andrew, it was a chance to right the wrongs of his past and help create the kind of workplace Emma had envisioned. Despite her success, Emma remained humble and grounded. One evening, as she was going through old photos at home, she came across a picture of herself as a young girl sitting under a tree, her face lit with curiosity as she studied a book. The memory brought tears to her eyes. She thought about how far she had come, from the girl who was told she didn't fit into the woman leading one of the most respected companies in the industry. She thought about the teachers who doubted her, the managers who dismissed her, and the countless moments of self-doubt she had overcome. Emma picked up her phone and called her parents. When her mother answered, Emma said, "I just wanted to say thank you for believing in me when no one else did." Her mother's voice was warm and full of pride. "Emma, you've always had everything you needed to succeed. We just gave you the space to find it." Years later, as Emma prepared to step down from her role as CEO, she reflected on her journey. Her decision to leave wasn't driven by burnout or dissatisfaction. It was driven by a desire to create space for new leaders to rise. Leaders like Andrew, Jessica, and countless others she had mentored along the way. At her farewell celebration, Andrew gave a heartfelt speech. "Emma Harper isn't just the best leader I've ever worked with, she's the reason I became a better leader myself," he said. Her vision, her resilience, and her unwavering belief in people have transformed this company and everyone in it. "Emma, you've left a legacy that will inspire us for generations to come." The room erupted in applause, and Emma felt a wave of gratitude and fulfillment. She had set out to prove her worth, but in the end, she had proven something even more important, that true leadership is about lifting others, breaking barriers, and leaving the world better than you found it. As Emma looked around the room, at the faces of the people she had inspired, the relationships she had built, and the changes she had made, she knew her journey was far from over. This was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where her impact would continue to ripple outward, touching lives in ways she could only imagine. And with that thought, Emma smiled, ready to face whatever came next.